in the wake of tragic incidences like the death of Freddie Gray and Michael Brown, I often hear that if we had more cameras on the streets, or at least on police officers, that we'd be able to hold police officers more accountable. And what I want to do in the limited time I have is discuss the data that we do have on body cameras and what their effects are, the role that body camera footage can play in investigations into police misconduct, the role of the federal government, where I'm, I suppose, standing now, albeit in a basement, and the issues that must be addressed if anyone is interested in formulating a body camera policy. So one of the most cited studies on body cameras was carried out in Rialto, California. It was a 12-month study that began in February 2012 to February 13. 54 frontline officers wore the cameras. There were about 1,000 shifts that were studied, and about half the officers did wear cameras, and the other half they did not. And interestingly, this was the result. This is from the raw data. So you'll see that the last bar chart here, this is the experimental period. There was a dramatic drop in use of force incidences as well as complaints against police officers. Now, that might strike you as great evidence that body cameras have a big role in improving police behavior, but there are a couple things I want to point out about this study. Firstly, it is not necessarily the case. You have this classic correlation-causation problem here, okay? So the study began just after a new police chief came in. The new police chief in Rialto implemented a number of reforms, so we don't know to what extent the other reforms also contributed to this. Also, it's worth pointing out that we don't know if the welcome results are because the cameras make citizens behave better or if they make police officers behave better. You have this interesting problem. We can't really isolate the effect. Are these body cameras having a civilizing effect on citizens or police, or a bit of both? And while working on this issue, I have come across a problem that some other people have found, which is there is very limited actual peer-reviewed study on body cameras. So if anyone in the audience or watching is in a position to carry out such a study, I urge them to do so. Another study I'd like to highlight is from Mesa, Arizona. This was another 12-month study with 50 cameras, and it was 12 months. The first 6-month period, activation was required. In the second 6-month period, activation was up to the officer. Two things I want to point out about this study is that when officers were allowed to turn the cameras on and off at their own discretion, the camera use declined 42%. Now, that should tell us something. While looking at the literature, it's important to keep in mind which of these studies include volunteers and which of these include people who are assigned to wear the cameras. In this, it was a mixture of both. But as you can see, so blue team refers to an IA. These refer to software that police officers use to record complaints and use of force incidents. As you can see, again, there is a decline in complaints as well as use of force, but we have the same problem as we have in the Rialto study. We are not sure if this is for other variables that weren't being looked at or because of other reforms in the police department. The last study I want to discuss was actually in Aberdeen, Scotland. This was a 3-month pilot that started with 18 cameras. They eventually moved up to 39 cameras, concentrated in Mastrick and Northfield, which are 2 neighborhoods in Aberdeen. They were selected because of their socially deprived status. So they looked at things like rates of crime, home ownership, health, and education. And you can look at the chart, and it looks like, well, compared to the same period the year before, so June to August 2010 is the trial period, compared to the same month the year before, there is a decline in crime, including breach of peace, vandalism, minor assault, and serious assault. But even the researchers in this study noted that it is difficult to show a causal relationship between the use of body cameras and changes in crime. In particular, it is challenging to attribute any changes in crime to one specific intervention. Given that there are other changes occurring simultaneously, both at societal level, such as increases in unemployment, and at a police force level, for example, in terms of restructuring of police services. So the evidence seems to suggest that after body cameras are deployed in a given area, you have welcome results, whether that is a decline in use of force, decline in complaints against the police, and you have a decline in crimes. The next slide shows that the two areas that were studied enjoyed a greater decline in crime than the rest of Aberdeen during the period. So what are we to make of this? What I want to argue is that even if police body cameras didn't have any effect on police behavior, they would still be worth using because of the evidence that they provide. The slide here is a still from body camera footage that was captured in March of 2014. The man in white with his hands in this position is James Boyd, who was a homeless paranoid schizophrenic who was camping out in the Sandia Mountains. He was shot and killed. He was also beanbagged, and a canine unit was sent on him. Now, what I think is interesting about this case is that in January, 2 officers were charged with murder. And at the time, the Bernalillo County District Attorney said, in this case, we have evidence to establish probable cause we didn't have in other cases. I have seen many, many body camera videos that show police misconduct. What's interesting is that very fact, that even if police officers are wearing these devices, they still do engage in this behavior on occasion. In this instance, 2 of the officers are facing murder charges, but I've seen, there was a recent case of a man holding a screwdriver who was shot and killed in Dallas. The officers are not facing charges in that case, last I checked. So what I think, going on what Tim was saying, body cameras are not a panacea. We can't expect that the wide deployment of these pieces of technology to solve all our problems. There are other policy reforms that we need to consider. So finally, I want to talk about federal agencies here. I'm a federalist. I think that policing should be handled at the local and state level. I don't think that the federal government has a role in telling local police departments how to conduct their business. However, a lot of federal agencies are armed, and a lot of federal agencies have authorities to arrest people. The DEA, the FBI, ATF, Custom Border Patrol. So I think the federal government certainly does have a role in discussing body camera policy for these agencies. I know the Obama administration has proposed giving money out for body cameras, as have Senators Rand Paul and Brian Schatz have co-sponsored legislation. I don't think that we should be attaching financial incentives for body camera use. I am more than happy for congressmen and senators and the president to take part in a conversation on body cameras, but we should be wary of attaching financial incentives. So I want to finish up by talking about what a good body camera policy might look like. We need to get this right. A bad body camera policy could be very dangerous. Looking throughout the country, there are examples of good policies and there are examples of bad policies. The knee-jerk libertarian reaction might be to assume that these body cameras should be on all the time and that the footage should be available to the public all the time. But there are serious privacy concerns here. Police regularly interact with people on the worst days of their life. We need to be careful when we think about the release of body camera footage that includes children who have been sexually assaulted or victims of domestic abuse. Police also talk to informants, people who have spoken to police in confidence. They are also oftentimes the first at the scene on fatal auto accidents. They also sometimes, as we know from dash camera footage, interact with celebrities and people who have perhaps had a bit too much to drink on a Saturday night. We need to have a privacy policy in place that clearly states when the cameras are going to be on, when they're going to be off, what information is going to be redacted when the footage is released, and what the process is for that footage to be released in the first place. One of the more particularly controversial things I want to talk about is policy related to when people can view the footage, specifically officers. I have seen policies proposals, I'm thinking specifically of the LAPD that proposed a body camera policy that would allow LAPD officers to view body camera footage before making an initial statement after a use of force or violent incident. I think we need to have a policy in place that puts accountability and transparency ahead of any opportunity police officers have to try and exonerate themselves by looking at body camera footage. I think body camera footage should certainly be used as evidence in criminal cases, but they shouldn't be afforded, police officers shouldn't be afforded the chance to view the footage before making statements.